و چرا دم که بنده مقبل قبول کرد ز جان هر سخن که سلطان گفت. چو بشنوی سخن اهل دل مگو که خطاست. سخن شناس نیی دلبر خطا اینجاست. بنده پیر مغانم که ز جهلم برهاند. پیر ما هر چه کند عین رعایت باشد. Befitting a fortunate slave, carry out every command of the master without any question of why or what. About what you hear from the master, never say it is wrong, because, my dear, the fault lies in your own incapacity to understand him. I am the slave of the master who has released me from ignorance. Whatever my master does is of the highest benefit to all concerned. These three couplets by Hafez is one of Meher Baba's favorites, and it was read to him by Alaba on Friday morning, January 31st, 1969. And now it is on display in and hanging in Mandali Hall in Meherabad. Beloved Avatar, Meher Baba Ki Jai. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming and bringing your light and love with you. Today, we are very excited and grateful to have Peter Booth with us. And of course, when one hears of Peter's name, right away, we think of who? We think of Hafez. And that is because he's been generously sharing about Hafez and his knowledge about his cosmology and the depth of his poetry. You know, Peter's journey with Hafez started in graduate school at Harvard University, continued at Ferdowsi University in Mashhad, Iran, and ultimately led him to Meherabad, where he resided for 32 years. You know, we also learned from Peter last night that Alaba was actually his tutor for 2 years, teaching him about Hafez. You know, we met with Peter in Washington, D.C. a few years before the COVID struck. And as he shared his insights on one of Hafez's ghazals, we were so captivated by his profound reflection on the deeper spiritual meaning. It was like a perspective unlike anything we had ever heard. He unveiled the divine beauty woven in Hafez's verses and opened our eyes to a new understanding of spirituality within the poetry that totally left us in awe, you know. Now he's here today, and he will talk about how Hafez intertwines the mind and the heart. You know, Baba's beloved Mehera told Peter countless times to learn Persian. And one day she told him that he would translate Hafez into English, to which Peter has done. Today, he will present on Avatar Meher Baba, Hafez of Shiraz, and the poetry of consciousness. With that being said, we will begin the begin. Jai Meher Baba. Peter, welcome. Please open your
Baba, Jai Meher Baba. How nice to be here. Thank you for having me. Okay, well, this is, I always write things out. This is about 15 minutes. I'll read this, and then if you want, I can read some translations of Hafez. I can tell some stories. Read something about Baal Kalchuri's relationship with Meher Baba and how Meher Baba taught Baal to write ghazals in the nature of Hafez as a way to illustrate some of the points here. So anyway, I'm going to start by reading this, and I will give it my best shot. Jai Baba. This is the first time that the Avatar has been a writer and taken a deep interest in literature. From an early age, Meher Baba wrote novels and poetry and this interest and ability stayed with him throughout his life. As a result, we have beautifully articulate descriptions of spirituality that are unmatched in any other age. And in general, Meher Baba used prose, or the style of writing that engages the logic of the rational mind, to present these articulately crafted gems to us. However, around the time that he completed God Speaks, the book that he described as the Bible for this age, Meher Baba shifted his attention from prose, or the style of writing that appeals mainly to the rational mind, to poetry, or the language that appeals to and expresses the love of the heart. First, regarding God Speaks, Erich Jesawala, who was Meher Baba's scribe for this book, described it as food for the mind, or as I heard him say a number of times, it is to answer the questions of the mind so that the mind can be satisfied and at rest. This will then allow the heart to open. The style of God Speaks borders on the poetic with its repetitions and beautifully flowing prose descriptions. As this was the final statement of Meher Baba's descriptions of creation and spirituality, it is but natural that Meher Baba would then shift from the language of the mind, or prose, to the language of the heart, or poetry. For this great work, unknown in any previous avataric advent, Meher Baba brought 3 men to live with him at Meherabad: Francis Brabazon, who wrote in English, Bal Kalchuri, who wrote together with Meher Baba in Hindi, and Ali Akbar Shapor Zaman, or Alaba, whose native tongue is Persian. Interestingly, only Francis Brabazon was a poet. The other 2 did not even have an interest in poetry. Yet in the case of Bal Kalchuri, Baba set him to writing almost immediately on his arrival, and Meher Baba went to a great extent to train Bal to write the Persian poetry ghazal, from form in Hindi, of which the Persian poet Hafez is the master. I have included Alaba in this group because even though Meher Baba did not give him any writing work, it was Alaba who frequently read Hafez out to Baba, especially at night. At Meherabad, Alaba's room on the men's side was closest to Baba's room on the women's side, making it easy for Baba to send for him when Baba wanted Alaba to come and read Hafez to him. This Alaba told me Baba did at least 2 nights a week. Additionally, Alaba did long stretches as Baba's night watchman. And during these night watches, too, he read Hafez to Baba on Baba's request. So this then was the setting at Meherabad, with these 3 poets being inspired, trained, and guided by the avatar of the age. Reigning supreme over the proceedings was the poetry of Hafez, for virtually everything that Meher Baba was trying to instill in the writings of Francis Brabazon and Bal Kalchuri, Hafez was the matchless example of poetic perfection, and Baba referred to Hafez over and over again as he attempted to train these 2 to write in Hafez's poetic style. One can only imagine how smug our dear Alaba must have been as he watched these 2 comparative hacks slave away to write to the level of his great national poet, Hafez of Shiraz. Perhaps this couplet of Hafez may be used to beautifully describe this scene. This is Hafez. I as the white lily, and you, beloved, as the red rose. We were in pure companionship, and whatever was in your heart was expressed by my tongue. I as the white lily, and you, beloved, as the red rose. We were in pure companionship, and whatever was in your heart was expressed by my tongue. In Persian poetry, the lily represents the tongue of speech, as its petals are shaped like the tongue. The red rose, representing the beloved, does not have petals whose shape allow it to speak. Hence, the white lily, here representing the tongue of the lover, speaks whatever is in the heart of the red rose, representing the beloved. Or, to put it another way, it is the nightingale representing the lover who, inspired by the beloved, represented by the red rose, sings to the beloved and not the other way around. Nevertheless, it is the red rose or beloved who teaches the lily or lover the subtleties of poetic speech. This is Hafez. From the time he taught me the words of love, my sayings as subtleties are discussed in every circle. From the time he taught me the words of love, my sayings as subtleties are discussed in every circle. Now, when we think about it for a moment, all of the world's spiritual literature is an attempt to place into words that which cannot be described. Among all of these attempts, throughout vast ages and many great literary traditions, the poetry of Hafez reigns supreme. During the time of the Prophet Muhammad, for example, many claimed to be the prophet, but all were rejected. When the words of Muhammad's prophecies were heard, however, they were so beautiful that many knew immediately that these words could only be the words of God. And on this basis alone, he was accepted as the prophet. Hafez has this to say about the beauty of his poetry when compared with the beauty of the prophet's speech. Words in the beloved's mouth are as pearls, but Hafez's speech is better. The beloved here refers to the prophet Muhammad. I'll read it again. Words in the beloved's mouth are as pearls, but Hafez's speech is better. Meherabad confirmed the same, for when quoting discourses, he often says, Hafez says it best, and he would then recite a couplet of Hafez. So poetry is the transformation of the language of the mind to the language of the heart. Spiritual poetry inspires us to turn from illusion towards reality. The poetry of Hafez is supreme, for it acts as a spiritual guide, and it does this by a poetic style that is a transformative description of the stages of the spiritual path. Or, as Meherabad says, every complete ghazal of Hafez refers to a certain spiritual state and stage for one who can understand it. Perhaps these two couplets from Hafez are helpful in understanding the value of the language of reason as compared to the value of the language of the heart. I am afraid that bewildered will remain the one who searches in the book of reason for a sign of the miracle of love. I am afraid that bewildered will remain the one who searches in the book of reason for a sign of the miracle of love. Or, I gave reason wine as a provision for the road and sent him out of the city of existence. I gave reason wine as a provision for the road and sent him out of the city of existence. Clearly, reason or the language of the mind has no place in the language of love, whose abode is the heart. But you can't just throw out logic or mental cognition. That is, get rid of the language of the mind completely, for if you do, you won't be able to conceive of anything. At best, you'll be some sort of intuitive blob. Hafiz solves this problem by using the mind to write around the mind to touch the heart. I'll say that again. Hafiz solves this problem by using the mind to write around the mind to touch the heart. This art is one of the primary aspects of Hafez's poetry. Another aspect of Hafez's poetic style is his ability to take a rational vocabulary and transform it into a spiritual one. That is, transform words that are simple concepts into words bordering on infinity. Take wine, for instance. Wine, after all, is just wine. You drink it and you get intoxicated. In Hafez's hands, however, it becomes a symbol for the intoxication of divine love. And divine love is an infinite, uncreated existence that is the sole reality permeating all of existence. This wine is contained in a goblet, and this goblet is a symbol for the lover's heart. This establishes the heart as being capable of containing love's infinite existence. The completely pure heart then becomes a mirror reflecting all of creation wherein everything is known. The tavern is the perfect master's darbar or court. It's not a tavern. It is often referred to as the tavern of ruin, as it is where, through the intoxication of the wine of divine love, spiritual progress takes place. But for this progress to take place, the foundations of the lover's present state have to be uprooted or ruined, since it's called the Tavern of Ruin, before the foundation of the next higher state is put into place. On and on this poetic river flows, with one simple developed and dovetailed into many others, until a rich poetic tapestry describing all of the stages and states of spirituality is created. Now, what if the manner of description changes the form or impact that these words have on us? This then takes us to a possible understanding of what spiritual poetry is, for it is not just descriptive, it is so powerful it can transform our spiritual state. It is for this reason, I believe, that Meher Baba put such a great deal of effort into it. While writing this, I stumbled upon this fascinating information compiled by a group of scientific researchers proving that the heart has its own brain. The heart's brain, they say, is an intricate network of several types of neurons, neuron transmitters, proteins, and support cells similar to those found in the brain proper. Its elaborate circuitry enables it to act independently of the cranial brain, to learn, remember, feel, and sense. The heart and the brain maintain a continuous two-way dialogue, influencing the other's functioning. Although it is not well known, the heart sends far more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. And the signals the heart sends to the brain can influence perception, emotional processing, and higher cognition and functions. Or, as Meher Baba said on Meherabad Hill in 1954 during the Three Incredible Weeks program, the heart is just the second state of the mind. And thinking of these things, that is the transformative power of true spiritual poetry, I am reminded of an Indian friend, a native speaker of Hindi, the language that Meher Baba and Bao wrote their poetry together in. He was the storekeeper for our little warehouse in Meherabad. He had a desk just inside the door, and his job was to record everything that went in and out of the stores. Now, this guy was not an intellectual or a great lover of poetry. He was just a guy. Somehow, a copy of MeherSepas, the book of Hindi poetry that Bao and Meher Baba wrote together, fell into his hands. Sitting at his desk in his spare time, he read this. Gradually seeing what he was doing, I began to sense an atmosphere of intoxication around him. Then one day, with tears in his eyes, he looked up at me and said, "This poetry is so beautiful, it could raise stones into song." Returning to God Speaks for a moment, Meher Baba has said that God Speaks is 90% of the missing book that he wrote in the 1920s. He added that the nothing and the everything, the book that Bao wrote from points that Meher Baba gave him, is the other 10%. And God speaks while describing the planes of consciousness. Meher Baba quotes couplets from Hafez that describe each one of these planes. Having done this, Meher Baba tells us that we, his lovers, have virtually no chance of experiencing what he has just described. For he tells us his way as our spiritual master is to take us under a veil so that we are not distracted nor allured by the beauty of the planes of consciousness. For he says, if we were to consciously tread the spiritual path through the planes, our arrival at the goal of God realization would occur only after a very long and even hazardous journey. He goes on to say that while he keeps us veiled from these planes of consciousness, he quietly uproots our separate ego. When this uprooting is complete, he lifts the veil, and in an instant, we become united with God. So why then did Meher Baba insist to many of his lovers that they read God Speaks at least 3 times? Or why did he tell Robert Dreyfus to read God Speaks over and over again until it sings in your veins? Or why did Meher Baba say that the poetry of Hafez would be very important in the coming spiritual age? The only answer can be that these 2 great works of spiritual literature significantly assist in the process of inwardly aligning and tuning us for the spiritual advancement that eventually leads to the God realization that Meher Baba says is going on in secret behind the veil, as this process is all that Meher Baba is interested in. So finally, my intention in this short presentation is to show the difference between the language of the mind and the language of the heart, and to show that Meher Baba's own interest and use of literature went from the use of a language designed for the mind to a poetic language designed for the heart. Moreover, Meher Baba's use of literature was to help us advance spiritually. Reading his works and the poetry of these great poets helps our consciousness to align with the spiritual structures of existence. Jai Baba.
How delighted I am to
Farhad.
see my old friend from way back when, and how wonderful you look, and how captivating, as Mernaz put it, your approach to Hafiz is. And I'm wondering if you're planning to put any of that in a publication of sorts, or online or something, so that we could all muse over it.
Oh yeah, well, I do have a book out called Dante and Hafez, I think it's called. And it has 3 essays in it. It's written with this wonderful Dante scholar, Franco Maciandero. And he did 3 essays on Dante, and I did 3 essays on Hafez. And they're really not connected. The reason why they're together is Hafez and Dante were sort of contemporaries. But my 3 essays on Hafiz, in those I outline Hafiz's cosmology. I go through a lot of the symbols and show how he's using his poetry to transform consciousness.
That's lovely. So Mernaz, I wonder if you might be kind enough to put the link or information about that book for those of us who are interested to read more.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. Happy to. It's nice to see. Do you have any questions or anything or additions?
I don't think I can add. You're the expert on this topic. Long ago, you invited me to kind of collaborate with you on Hafiz, and I haven't been free to do that, but I just, as you know, love Hafiz, and any droplet about Hafiz is an elixir. So I'm very grateful.
Oh, well, great. It's over the years, yeah, we've had some really nice conversations about Hafiz, and I hope those will continue. And again, it's wonderful to see you. Now, I thought maybe this might be nice if I read to show the extent that Baba went with this poetry. I have the story of Baba and Bao writing poetry together. Maybe I'll read that out, because I mean, it shows how important this was to Meher Baba. So this is a story of Meher Baba teaching Bao to write ghazals in the style of Hafiz. Baba was in a splendid mood. This is from Lord Meher. As he had previously hinted in Meherabad, he informed Bao, "Today I will teach you to write ghazals." Bao stood before Baba sweating profusely and did not say a word. He had protested about writing ghazals before when the subject had come up, and he was still working to complete the ghazal-like songs he had written. Baba complimented him. "You have written with all your heart, and the songs are good, but I want you to write ghazals today, and I will teach you. I am going to give you one line, and I want you to repeat it to the rhythm I will beat out on my thighs." Now, of course, because of Baba's injury in the second accident, that was very painful for him to beat his thigh. So saying, Baba dictated this line in Hindi. Now my heart is terrified even to hear the name of love. Now my heart is terrified even to hear the name of love. Bao began repeating this aloud as Baba played a rhythm with his fists, pounding his thighs like a tabla. Standing before Baba, Bao repeated the line over and over again in Hindi. Now my heart is terrified even to hear the name of love. Half an hour passed, but Bao did not understand the rhythms that Baba was trying to teach him. Bao was perspiring, Baba was also perspiring. Still, Bao had no idea what Baba was trying to make him comprehend. So he said, Baba, I don't follow. Please don't take this trouble. You are already burdened with your seclusion work. Not once stopping his constant rhythmic pounding, Baba only gestured, continue. Bao repeated the line again and again for another half an hour, but he still had no notion of the poetic meter Baba was trying to convey. Again, he pleaded, Baba, it is too hot in here. Now, please stop. This was in Guru Prasad during the summer of 1967, when the temperature would have been 110 degrees, and Baba insisted on keeping all the windows closed. So it's a furnace. Baba again gestured, continue. And once again, for another 15 minutes, the sound of Baba slapping his thigh to Bao's repetition of the same Hindi line went on. Finding it monotonous, Bao became more and more exasperating. He found it hard to concentrate because of the oppressive heat. Baba, too, was wringing with perspiration from the exertion. It had now been going on for an hour and 15 minutes. Bao could not contain himself any longer and blurted out, Baba, please stop. I can't follow anything. This time, Baba looked at him in disgust and stated, you are useless. Go sit down. As Baba lay back down on his bed and continued to pound his thighs with his fists, as if he were playing a tabla. Bao sat in the chair feeling foolish and sorry for having failed and for having displeased Baba. Then something wonderful happened. As he was sitting in the chair, all of a sudden, it was as if a breeze of understanding blew across his mind. Instantly, he knew what Baba wanted. He understood how to write ghazals, the meter and the style. Immediately, without saying a word, Baba sat up in his bed and snapping his fingers said, compose, compose. Within half an hour, Bao composed the first ghazal of what was to become the book of ghazals titled by Baba MEHER. He read it out and Baba was quite pleased. He embraced Bao and assured him, yes, this is what I want. Now I will continue giving you one line every day, and you should continue composing in this way. Every day for 2 months, Baba would give Bao one, sometimes two, sometimes many couplets from which to compose ghazals. Sometimes Baba was in the mood, he himself would compose the entire ghazal. At times, he would describe a story such as that about Sarmas, Majnun and Layla, or Farhad and Shireen, and give Bao points which he wanted him to versify. And each day, when Bao would go to Baba in the afternoon, Baba would inquire, how many ghazals did you write today? Read them out. So that gives you a sense of the great effort that Baba put into this work. And of course, that signifies its importance.
We have a question here from the audience, and it's saying, can you describe Hafez describing pain of separation from God and the bliss of union?
Yes, well, of course he does that. I mean, his poems are about the pain of separation from God. And then, he wrote those two ghazals after God realization that Meher Baba said he wrote after God realization. What's the other one?
دوش وقت سحر
Go ahead. Go ahead.
دوش وقت سحر از غصه نجاتم دادند و در آن ظلمت شب آب حیاتم دادند.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's lovely. So now we want to hear a little bit about you, about tutoring you. Can you tell us some
Yeah,
story?
so what happened was, you see, I came from Iran in 1978. I had been in Ferdowsi University there, and I came for my summer vacation for 3 weeks, and I only intended to stay for 3 weeks. And the revolution was getting out of hand, and I was really looking forward to going back to my university because the classes were going to be shut down. And in Ferdowsi University, they had these brilliant literary professors who weren't going to have anything to do except tutor me because they didn't have any classes. So I thought, this is going to be great. I'll go back to Ferdowsi University and I'll have these brilliant people tutor me in Persian poetry. And I was really excited and I couldn't wait to get back. And I was sitting on a bench at Meherabad, and one day Monty came up and sat next to me and said, "You don't want to go back to Iran, you want to stay here." And I looked at her and I thought, I really want to go back to Iran. I don't want to stay here. But I thought, well, this is God's sister. She's asking you to stay here. You can't say no to God's sister. So I had the good sense to say, yes, that's great, Monty. I would really like to stay here. So Monty, she was so considerate and understanding. She knew that it was going to be hard when I decided to stay, to draw out of that world. So she asked Alaba to tutor me in Persian. Now, Alaba hated to tutor anybody in Persian. All of these Western pilgrims would come to him and want to learn Persian, and one way or another, he would blow all of them off. But you see, he couldn't do that with me because Mani told him that he had to tutor me in Persian, so he was stuck. So in those days, I was out at Meherabad a lot because I was helping Balna too with his books. I was the editor for Balna too's books. So 3 or 4 days a week after Alaba brought us all tea, I would go back to Alaba's room, and for about 45 minutes, he would tutor me in Persian. And it usually amounted to you had those little storybooks in class 1, 2, 3, 4 when you're in elementary school in Iran. We had those books, stories about the swallow who would come and build a nest and all that stuff. And I would make mistakes and Alaba would be furious. And, it was obvious he really didn't want to be doing this. And believe me, I am not someone with an unusual language ability. So this went on for about 2 years. And I could tell he's thinking, how can I get out of this? I can't. Monty told me I have to do this. How can I get out of this? So shrewd man that he is, one day at tea, when the veranda was filled with pilgrims and Monty was there, Alaba came out. I'm sitting there just drinking my tea. Alaba came out and said, "You see this man?" I'm just sitting there. Everybody looks at me. "This man is a brilliant man. He has learned Persian perfectly. He has no more need for Persian lessons. Jai Baba." And of course, Monty heard that, and that was the end of it. He got out of it. Yeah, well, did you know Paul Smith? He's done a translation. He's an Australian man who's done a translation of Hafez. Alaba doesn't want to be bothered by any of this stuff, right? He liked to be in his room. He would listen to BBC Persian. He had correspondence with different Baba lovers, and he really didn't want to be bothered. So one day, Paul Smith shows up at Meherabad, and he's got these two big books. And he comes up to me and he says, I've translated the entire Divan of Hafez. And I thought, wow, Paul, that's great. And he said, Paul was sort of shy, humble guy, you see. He said, will you come with me to Alaba's room so I can get Alaba to read them? And I thought, well, sure, we can, So we go around to Alaba's room. Now, Alaba kept the door of his room open, so a shadow would fall before you would actually arrive at the door to Alaba's room. So he would see the shadow and say, yes, who is it? And I'd say, Alaba, knowing it, Alaba, it's Peter. Yes, what do you want? I was the pariah by then, of course. I said, Alaba, this wonderful man, Paul Smith, has translated the entire Divan of Hafez, and he would like you to go through it. And Alaba says, is that so? I said, yes. He said, come in, bring me those books. So we go into Alaba's room, and Alaba knows, that Paul wants him to get deeply involved in this. So he says, you show me that. So he takes it and he reads for about 15 seconds. He slams the book shut. This is a perfect translation of Hafez, J. Baba. I had it in mind. I thought, this is the man who for years read Hafez out to Meher Baba. He knows all of Meher Baba's favorite poems of Hafez. I will see if I can record him reading Meher Baba's favorite Hafez. So the same thing, I go back there with the Divan of Hafez, and yes, who is it? I say, it's Alaba, it's Peter Booth. Yes, what do you want? I said, Alaba, you were the one who read Hafez out to Meher. You know all of Meher Baba's favorite Hafez poems. Could you show me some of them? He says, you give me that. He takes the Divan. He opens it up, slams it shut. All of them, J. Baba.
Peter, now I want to ask you, I know as you went to Iran, and I mean, I was a child, but do you have any memories of coming to, the Tehran meetings at Esfandiar? Did you go there?
Oh, of course.
Can you share some of those stories?
Yeah, so I was with Farhad. I stayed at Farhad's house. And so, Farhad says, no, we'll go to Esfandiar's for a Baba meeting. So you would go up Damavand, right? Mountain. And on this huge highway, it's like an 8-lane highway or something. And on the right was the Shah's palace. And just as you got up towards the Shah's palace, you would turn left and go down this little dirt road. You see, I'm thinking, wow, there's the Shah's palace. I mean, he's the king. And you turn left and you go down this little dirt road and to this cottage. And we get out of the car and the door to the cottage opened. And there stood the most radiantly beautiful man I have ever seen, Isfandiar Visali, totally pink, this huge aura. And right away, I knew this is the real Shah of Iran. The guy next door is nobody. And then in those days, Farhad remembers this. They were translating God Speaks. That's what they were doing. They had this incredible group, and a lot of you guys were, just little kids, and you were all translating God Speaks together. It was fantastic.
Either it was
Innocent,
Kashanak.
so filled with Baba's presence, Baba's love, so Persian, because the Persians, of course, love gatherings and home and family and everything. It was tremendous.
I just remembered when Peter was talking about Mani encouraging him not to return to Iran. I don't know if you remember, but we were sitting in Mandali Hall with Erich, and this topic came up. You wanted to go back to Iran, and Falu wanted to go back to Iran because wanted to come to Iran because his parents had asked me to find him a job in Iran. You know, Iran was very prosperous at the time, and I have never seen Erich so firm and so adamant, saying, "No, you guys are not to go to Iran, neither you nor you." And that was, I was a bit taken aback with the force of Erich's pronouncement.
Oh, gee, thank you. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I have a very vivid memory, visual memory of it.
You know, you are talking about how reading Hafez's poetry, it raises our consciousness. That's what you said, right, Peter?
Yes, I think it totally transforms us. And that was the thing that the scientists have found. The mind gathers information logically and sends it to the heart, and then the heart changes it into forms of inspiration and sends those inspirations back to the mind, and that changes the mind's perceptions. So scientifically, we've actually proven it now that this is what happens.
And also the fact that Baba was so insistent and took so much time to teach the ghazal form to Bauji, that rhythm that he banged in his thigh is now reverberating in the whole of creation. I mean, what the avatar does is not just, you know, just to teach him how to write a poem. He energized, he kind of put some great power into that form so that the rhythm of that ghazal form is now empowered by the avatar of this age.
Yes, well, I think that when you read Hafez really closely along those lines, he is the ultimate nature poet. And what that means is that his poetry is in line with all of the structures of existence. That is what his poetry is, to me anyway. So that's perfect. That's what this real spiritual poetry does. It puts us in tune with all of the spiritual forces in creation and accordingly changes our consciousness, slowly, unseen, but that's what I feel is happening with it.
Peter, we have a question in the chat room. Anne Hogg has asked, were the scientists of the heart connected to HeartMath?
Yes, it's from HeartMath. Yes, that's right. If you would like to fill the world with beauty eternally, ask the morning breeze to lift for a moment the veil from your face. If you would like to fill the world with beauty eternally, ask the morning breeze to lift for a moment the veil from your face. The one whose heart has lived for love never dies. Our eternity is recorded in the register of the universe. The one whose heart has lived for love never dies. Our eternity is recorded in the register of the universe. The ones familiar with this path of love have drowned in this deep ocean without getting wet. The ones familiar with this path of love have drowned in this deep ocean without getting wet. Means the ones who are filled with divine love, that love cannot be impressed by anything. And as a result, they can't get wet.
I did have a pleasure to meet Peter in 2 years in Myrtle Beach, and he was kind enough to give me this beautiful book which is entitled The Illuminated Hafez, Love Poem for the Journey to Light. And there is a section in this book related to Meherabad, and also a section that Peter has talked about Hafez, and especially there is some segment about a glossary, and very beautifully and clearly explain the word of a Hafez poem. Thank you so much.
I want to second that. I
Thank you,
got the
Dr.
book
Jababa.
as soon as it came out, I got it, and I also got a couple of copies for my children. I thought it was so beautiful and so wonderful.